Welcome back, everybody, to another Silicon Labs Talking Tech podcast. Today, I'm excited. I have two of my great friends at Silicon Labs joining me. I have Mike Dow and Brent Wilson. They're both a product and an applications manager for IoT security at Silicon Labs. So thanks, both of you, for joining.
Thanks, Kyle.
Happy to be here.
All right. Well, the reason I brought the two of you on board is we're going to talk about a brand new product. And I think there may be a lot of questions that our listeners have about it. It's about our custom part manufacturing service. It was released a couple of weeks ago. And I think that it was absolutely created because of customer demand. And I think it would be great for you guys to talk about how it's going to help them combat the recent security challenges that are facing IoT products. So you guys ready to jump into the questions?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, the first one is pretty basic. It's what I do for every episode is I try to give just a high level description. So, you've joined before, Mike. Now that we have this new service at a high level, what does CPMS help solve for our customers?
Yeah, I would say one of the primary things it does is help with the regulations and legislation that are looming and on the horizon that will be hitting our customers in the next 2 or 3 years. These regulations will require you to run authenticated code, which basically means that you're going to have to do a secure boot. So you're going to have a public key injected into the silicon to do that. It also requires that you have secure interfaces for your debug ports and communications. And so, having a debug port that you can unlock requires another public key to be injected. You're going to have to do over-the-air updates. And so there are over-the-air update or over-the-air decryption keys that you're going to have injected as well. And then it also requires unique identities. And so certificate chains are going to become a bigger part of what our customers are going to have to do. So taking that unique identifier a little further, there's also a new paradigm shift called Xero Trust. It's been around for 2 or 3 years. I've heard about it for quite some time, but there was a Biden executive order that was recently signed in May that, on IoT, improving IoT security for the United States, and it dictated Xero Trust. And Xero Trust means that you can't trust anything behind a firewall anymore. It used to be you could. Now you have to essentially authenticate that device as it joins the network, and you have to authenticate it continuously during its life. And that's going to require a secure identity protected by security in the chip. And that is, again, certificates. The other trend is we're starting to see protocols like Matter, Wi-SUN, Bluetooth Mesh that are going to require certificate injection. So again, those two major things are big ones. I'd like to throw the next one, product counterfeiting, over to Brent to comment on.
Certainly. So as Mike mentioned, the device certificates are very useful for authentication into these different ecosystems, and also for just securing that the devices that you're talking to is the device that you think you're talking to. One of the other main use cases for these secure identities is in anti-counterfeiting. Because each of the products gets injected with a security credential that is backed by a certificate chain, those certificates themselves can't be cloned, they can't be faked. So that provides a strong assurance that the device that you're talking to is not only the device you think it is, but it also is an authentic device, because we offer these certificates to be customized using our CPMS service. And that ensures that the certificates are mapped one-to-one with a custom OPN or custom orderable part number that's generated by the CPMS service.
Yeah, so you guys covered exactly what CPMS is helping the customer solve. And to be clear, our parts enable these features, but CPMS really takes a lot of the effort to enable them off the customer's shoulders, right? There have been some of these features on other parts around the market, but being able to enable them and configure them in a production capability has been difficult, right? So this is what CPMS was created for, is to really hand the customers a device, but make it easy for them to take advantage of all those regulation and certificates and counterfeiting measures. That's what CPMS is really simplifying, correct?
Yeah, it's one of the main things we're trying to point out is that it's not just a programming service, right? So that's one of the questions we often get was, well, anybody can do this. And the truth is any contract manufacturer can, and a lot of our distributors can basically place an image or flash an image that you give them in a location you give them. What we're offering is secure provisioning, right? So all of this discussion about identity injection, key loading, and things like that, those are things that you've seen typically in the secure element world, not in the microcontroller world or the NPU world. So again, we're offering secure provisioning. Programming the flash is just one of the things we can do. You know, injecting the certificate chains and customizing those. You'd be hard pressed to find a contract manufacturer that could do that if you could even train them to do it, right? So you would have to learn how that is set up, and then you would have to basically coach your contract manufacturer to be able to do all of that. And also like tamper detection, things like that, that can get very complicated. And not only do we have the CPMS service, but we also have a very dedicated apps team and field application engineers that are being trained up on how to use this. And maybe Brent, you could comment a little bit more on that.
So as Mike mentioned, CPMS provides for a lot of different types of provisioning services, including flash programming and also provisioning of keys for secure boot and secure debug unlock. I mean, what my team does is we typically help the developers on the front end of that process when they're actually in development, trying to understand how to use our security features like secure boot, like secure debug unlock, and also how to use the secure identities to do authentication in the systems. And so typically we will help customers during that part of the process. They file support tickets and we answer them that way, or they submit questions on our community forum. And then if they go into CPMS and try to start configuring a device and have some issues or questions, then we can of course help them through that process as well. But what we find is that normally CPMS itself is fairly intuitive. It's pretty easy to get started. You can just go to our website at cpms.silabs.com and you can log in to your standard Silicon Labs account, or if you don't have a Silicon Labs account yet, you can create one right there. And then you're presented with a list of configuration questions. You get to choose if you want to provision keys on the device, which keys you want to provision, if you want to enable secure boot or secure debug, or to lock the debug port in a different way, or leave the debug port unlocked, you can do that. You can also download or upload your code, which include a bootloader and or the application, and configure advanced tamper settings and actually define your security certificates all from within that UI. And it's usually, we find that it's straightforward and customers can use it without any problems. But of course, if you have any questions about it, you can submit support tickets.
Yeah, and we might want to mention, Brent, that at WorksWith just a few weeks ago, your team did a great hands-on walkthrough of using that web interface. So as you said, it's super intuitive, but I would suggest our listeners, I'll put the link in the podcast description. They can actually go through and see Benjamin go through the actual process of it. I think you're right. It will make everything that you and Mike introduced pretty easy to understand. And, I think then the listeners will say, yeah, it is intuitive. And this is something I should introduce to my own product development.
Yeah, absolutely. And the WorksWith video is an excellent tutorial on how to use CPMS for anyone who has not seen it the first time. We also encourage customers just to go and log into CPMS and kick the tires on it. Like, you don't have to put in your credit card information or pay any fees to test drive the service. Now, once you are ready to actually generate a custom OPN and get one delivered to you, then you can actually submit your parts for evaluation. And at that time, we can accept a credit card payment for the processing of the initial 10 first articles that we ship. that are used for you to evaluate the custom part to make sure that it's been configured and provisioned correctly for your specifications. And once you evaluate it and everything checks out, you can go and then accept that part. At that point, you'll be given an OPN, a unique OPN for your part, which you can then order from any of our authorized Silicon Labs distributors in any quantity of devices that you want to purchase.
Yeah, that's good detail, Brent. So Mike, what parts are eligible for the service that Brent just talked about? So, if I do go and I do the training, or I just go and explore the CPMS website, I go to the parts that I start selecting, which ones are eligible for the CPMS service?
In general, it's all series 1 and all series 2 ICs and modules. So that pretty much covers the XG1X, which is series 1, and the XG2X, which is the series 2 primarily.
Okay, and Brent mentioned the prototyping quantities. What are the, for people that are really taking a look into this, what are the general costs? What are the minimum order quantities? Are there any NRE fees? I mean, just so they can get a feel for what we're looking at as for charges.
Yeah, the majority, what I call the automated features of CPMS are a flat $500 for 10 samples. So we're basically setting that bar as it's a non-trivial bar to basically keep people from just playing around and spitting up our resources and they're not really serious about it. So the $500 NRE fee is all you pay for a large number of the services. And this is key injection, setting up the bootloader, doing the flash programming as well. There are a couple of services like the custom certificate injection that will require a fairly substantial NRE fee. So if device certificate customization only is $15,000 NRE, and then a full customization of the chain is $25,000. And there is a minimal order quantity for all the automated stuff. It's roughly 5,000. So that again covers the key injection, setting the debug port, bootloader, and all the flash. That's 5,000 parts. And then on these other customizations, it's 20,000 parts is the minimum order quantity.
Okay, well, that's great, Mike. But I think I'm getting an understanding here. So as I'm a customer developing with these Series 1, Series 2 parts, and I'm in engineering, I'm going to investigate all these features. I'm going to figure out which ones I want to work in my product. I'm going to do some evaluation on my own. But when I get to that next stage, and I want to make sure that I can hand it off to manufacturing, then I go and I use the CPMS website at Silicon Labs. Is that kind of the way it works?
Yes, absolutely. So essentially, in the world without CPMS, the next step in that product development process would be to go into manufacturing and to start spinning up the manufacturing line. And in the universe with CPMS, instead you go to CPMS, put in all of your device configuration and selection options, go through the first article acceptance process, and then when Silicon Labs delivers the devices to your door, they're already pre-provisioned. And so you can just install them into your end product without having to do all of the programming and provisioning steps during your manufacturing process.
Okay, well, that makes a lot more sense to me. I was thinking that I'd have my junior engineer sitting at a table cranking in different configurations of the parts and waiting 10 days to get his next prototype. But he's going to do a lot of development beforehand. Once he gets to that stable product configuration, then he's going to enable this and work with the production team to get parts from this service. That's great. All right, well, before we wrap up, Mike, you've done a lot of presentations on this with our team. And so I think for the listeners, it might be great for you just for us to step back and you just share with us, maybe what are the 3 top use cases that you see that maybe our listeners would be surprised about the benefits or the use cases?
Okay, yeah. So we've already talked about several of them, the unique part number benefit to that, injecting the customer keys. And by the way, that's roughly 10 private public key pairs. The secure identity, right? That's an important part. Some things that we don't talk about a lot, which I think are surprising, is the secure bootloader. So one of the things we offer is programming in a secure bootloader. It can be our Gecko bootloader, it can be the customer's bootloader. But what that allows you to do from that point on is only load encrypted firmware, because you can set up the bootloader to basically do the decrypt as it's loading the code base. The really cool thing about that our customers should be excited about is that protects their IP, because now they can essentially have us program a bootloader onto the chip, lock the chip, and so that bootloader is the piece of code that has to run in the boot chain. And from then on, you have to load code through the bootloader at that point, and it can be encrypted. So you don't have to give your contract manufacturer unencrypted software. You can essentially send them test images that they can load onto the chips, and you can send them production images. And that helps also protect their IP when it's overseas and they're not sure what's happening. A second thing is the secure debug port. Most people think about just locking it, but we actually offer a way to cryptographically unlock it. And so that's a very unique feature for us. Both of those features have been glitch mitigated, so very secure features. And the other thing is our tamper detection. Tamper detection is a really great way to add local attack vector mitigation to your products. And with CPMS, we actually set the tamper detection up to where it's secure from the get-go from a default perspective. And we also give some hints on what things to change or what you might want to do. But you can actually set up the tamper detection for the part, which covers a lot of things, including maybe putting tamper on the cases and things like that. Of course, that particular one you can't set up in our factories because it has to be done during manufacture of the device itself. But those are the three things I think most people would be surprised we have.
And if they want to learn a little bit more, would they go to cpms.scilabs.com or maybe just to scilabs.com? Where do you suggest they go to learn more about some of these use cases and features?
Yeah, one of the cool things we did with the CPMS interface was that we have the app note links directly where it's talking about setting the function up. So you can actually go delve into the application notes right from that feature set and get the straight skinny on exactly how the tamper detection works, for instance.
Okay, that's great. Well, thanks both of you for taking time to help our listeners better understand CPMS. I think I learned quite a bit, and I know the listeners did. So thanks for the time you guys took.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, no problem. I will put those links in the podcast description so people can quickly access some more information, and they can go to the CPMS service and look at the GUI that Brent explained. So all the listeners, make sure you take a look at that. And for all the listeners, thank you very much for the time you take to listen to our podcast. We'll continue to deliver new Talking Tech podcasts to help you understand the products that Silicon Labs makes and some of the applications that they're in. Until next time, everyone, stay safe.